There is a left-wing creator named Vaush. He has almost 500,000 subs on YouTube. When he goes live, he gets around 10,000 live viewers. He's a very popular commentator, despite being wildly controversial for a variety of reasons, some of them personal, some of them professional. And one of the things that's very interesting is that having children has been right-wing coded for a while. Caring about having families and caring about raising those families in a good way has become a conservative coded thing in our culture. And obviously, I don't think that's good for America. I think liberals and progressives, I'm a never Trump Republican myself. I think liberals and progressives still need to have kids, still need to value family, still need to value their parents, still need to value their extended families, cousins, uncles, aunts, all that kind of stuff. And so the fact that Vaush is fighting tens of thousands of his own chat, well, I guess, yeah, around 10,000 people. He's fighting 10,000 people on whether or not it's good to have kids. I would see as a funny, weird contradiction in the progressive left, but also a sign that hopefully there's a fight going on for pro-social behavior, even amongst the most extreme commentary people in alternative media. Without further ado, Vaush.
Recent data from eHarmony's 2025 dating diaries found that 28% of Gen Z singles said differing political views could cause them to turn down a date, compared with 21% of millennials. For eHarmony, too, this is like boomer. So what Gen Zers are using eHarmony? An October poll from the New York Times and Siena College poll showed a striking 51-point gender divide among Gen Z voters. Women aged 18 to 29 favored former Vice President Kamala Harris over President Donald Trump by 38 points, while men in the same group favored Trump by 13 points. No other generation exhibits a gap this wide. Sheesh. Sheesh. I don't want to give women credit because they're annoying, but, you know, seems like they're out here trying to save civilization.
All right. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Vaush's content, okay, listen, I viciously disagree with his politics. I think he's had some very cringe takes. I think he apologizes for terrorism in reference to, he talked about like sabotaging like loggers. He talked about like putting debris and shrapnel in order to prevent the cutting of trees. So when you chainsaw into a tree, your chainsaw explodes into your eyeballs. He's talked about how maybe like political assassinations are okay. And he's also talked about how there might need to be a militia-based civil war in the United States and how he needs to prep his audience for it. He's talked about the, what is it, like a trans genocide, where because conservatives are going hardcore after trans people, which I don't agree with, but because they're going hardcore after trans people legislatively, that trans people need to effectively like arm up and get ready to fight an existential genocide in the streets of America. I think this is all like cringe, delusional LARPing. However, he is funny some of the time. And what we would call this is like tactical misogyny, where Vaush himself has gotten caught being a sex pest early in his career. He's been doing very cringe things like looking at cartoon pornography of teenagers engaged with cartoon horses, which is super cringe, super gross, whatever. But because he's funny, he gets a pass. And so tens of thousands of people continue to watch him. And let's face it, misogynist and sexist jokes, you know, it plays to young men and non-binary people who can find women to be annoying sometimes. Apologies to the few women who watch the content, but it is what it is, right? So technically he said fight out of your windows, lol. Yeah, you could make an argument that that's somehow self-defense, you know, shooting people with rifles out of your windows, I guess. Sacred Snow says, JVL, resident Dem on the Bulwark is also a natalist. I don't think it's a bad thing among Dems. I think natalism is bad amongst the far left. True. I think the left says it's getting too expensive for kids, which is true. But I'm going to share this with you guys, okay? Because I want you guys to be a pro-natalist chat as well. There's no right time to have a kid. The kid will always be too expensive. What is it, like paying 30 grand even after insurance to a hospital? It's not going to happen. You're not going to save up 30 grand in order to give it to the hospital. What you're going to do is you're going to get pregnant, you're going to go to the hospital, you're going to have your kid, you're going to tell them to bill you. Insurance will pay them 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever it costs in order to birth a child. And then when the bill comes for 30 grand, you say, hey, listen, I don't have this. And then if you're rich enough to pay it, you pay it. And if you're not rich enough to not pay it, you don't pay it. It's that simple. And if your credit takes a hit in order for you to bring a life into this world, you bring a life into this world. Okay. Especially if you want to. If you and your partner want a child, you do it. Okay. And then also, I real quick, brief rant before we get back into it. Your child does not need a Bluey backpack, although my kids have a Bluey backpack. They don't need to go to Disney, all the time. They don't need to go to Europe. They don't need to eat organic, okay? They need to have fun. That's what kids need. They need to play with a hose in the backyard. They need to chase whatever animals are in your backyard. They need to play with the dogs or cats or whatever you have in your house. They need to go to school and have a good time with their friends. And then when they get home, even though you're dead tired from working all day, you just need to talk to them, love them, cuddle them, watch a TV show, wrestle with them, have a good time. Okay, that's what they need. They don't need all this materialist, vacation-y, gobbledygook, keeping up with the Joneses. They need you to love them and have fun with them. That's what they need. Okay, so if you're worried about getting your kids Disney tickets, don't worry about it. Oh, my wife, the mother of my children, walked in and said, "Oh, that was really sweet." But she's the one who bought the Bluey backpacks and the Disney tickets. And she's like, "We're still going to go to Disney, though." Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. What if my credit is my baby? Bad Christian Valeris. Bad Christian Valeris. Sen Patty says, "My wife and I keep having the same talk, lol. Maybe once we actually buy a house." Listen, I'm going to tell you, okay? Sen Patty, I want you to hear me. I'm talking to you and mostly only you. Also the dozens of other people in chat, but I'm talking to you, okay? There's never going to be a right time to have a kid. Having a kid in an apartment is going to suck. And when you get a house, sure, if that's on your horizon. But if that's like a half a decade away, then don't worry about it, right? Start now. And what I would say is there's this story that I like to tell about undercover cops who infiltrated the Hells Angels. And even if you're not a Christian, it's totally fine. It's a good phrase. They needed to ride their bikes fast, which can get you killed. They needed to hang out with murderers and rapists and drug dealers all day, which can get you killed. And they needed to pretend that they were hardcore enough in order to hang out with the Hells Angels and not get murdered. And so they needed a phrase in order to psych themselves up, in order to deal with the trials and tribulations of this undercover work. And so what they came up with, because they were all Christian, is the phrase J-HAP. J is in James, H is in Henry, A is in Apple, P is in Paul. And J-HAP means Jesus hates a pussy. So what I'm saying to you is if getting a house is a decade away or half a decade away, have your kid now. Jesus hates a pussy. Moving on.
NZ plus eHarmony equals sugar babies. You think so? I'm 100% convinced the falling birth rates are caused by plastic pollution. Nah, it genuinely, it seems like the main cause of the falling birth rates is just that people used to be more bored than they are now. And that's it. People are less bored. There's more stuff to do. And also the expectations for raising a child are a lot higher. I mean, birth rates have fallen literally everywhere. It doesn't even seem to be that much determined by politics. They've fallen in Saudi Arabia, Is birth rates falling bad? Yeah. I mean, if you want like society to be stable, you want to eventually hold it at a more or less consistent population, give or take. Isn't that like a developed countries thing? Yeah, but the birth rate is falling everywhere.
Because everywhere is developing.
Everywhere. Hot countries, cold countries, poor countries, wealthy countries, countries with a lot of provisions for like maternity leave and like the government gives you a care package or whatever, countries where those things don't happen. Everywhere, all across the board. I think a lot of it is just capital kind of like forcing people to optimize every second of their life or they fall behind. A lot of it is also like social and cultural standards about child rearing are shifting more towards individual care, which is really, really difficult for parents. And also it's them dang video games. Like, why raise a kid when you can spend your entire life having fun?
Hi, I'm Andy Levian, General Counsel at the DNC. We just sued President Trump and Doge, and I hope you will support us by donating to our fight fund.
Donate to the DNC, I guess. They might actually be doing something instead of just sitting back and getting their asses kicked. Philip Coffey says, my wife did volunteer work as a patient advocate for a while. It's actually pretty crazy what you can get away with not paying for medical expense-wise. It's just people don't know what's possible. Exactly. And by the way, most hospitals, they will write off the debt. If the insurance company, let's say there's a $50,000 procedure or $100,000 procedure, okay? If they get 30 grand of a $50,000 procedure from the insurance company, they're not happy. They obviously want the other 20K, but after a while, they'll just be like, okay, well, the person obviously can't afford it. It is what it is. And then they just write it off, right? I'm not saying that's good for our system. It's not good for it. But what do I care about more? Insurance companies and hospitals making a substantive profit, or do I care about you having the families that you want? I want you to have the families that you want. Ultimately, I barely care about whether or not the medical industry makes a substantive profit. So you, in this case, should be selfish, should prioritize what you want out of family, what you want out of life. And no offense, but consequences be damned, because the consequences are you take a hit to your credit. Okay. Do you want to have like the miracle of life in your life, or do you want to take a hit to your credit? Enjoy the miracle of life and screw your credit is what I'm saying. Sacred Snow says, thanks for the base parenting tips. I'm 27 and have almost 2-year-old twin girls. I aggressively seek out these rational takes. Listen, it's hard out there being a parent. It's hard as hell, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun as hell too. It's fun as hell too. Conservative liberalism says, my parents never brought me to Disney, but we went to the local skate park to camp and vacation instead. I didn't turn that messed up. Yeah, exactly. You just need adventures. It doesn't have to be the expensive, stereotypical adventures. No bad children, only bad parents. Nah, there's some bad kids. There's some kids who legitimately their parents are like genetically freaked out sociopaths. And so there's some kids who are legitimately like they are predisposed to sociopathy. Now, that being said, environmental factors can, of course, change most children into being like socialized, decent human beings. So you have to maximize environment in order to create the healthiest, happiest, strongest, most socialized population possible. Sen Patty says, we're already in the process of getting a house, but F me, J-Hap is great. Well, good. Spread it far and wide. Everyone in chat. I was talking to Sen Patty specifically, even if you're not religious, but J-Hap is an excellent phrase. You're nervous about something, you're scared about something, you're anxious about something, even if you don't believe in Jesus as the divine manifestation of God, say J-Hap or Jesus hates a pussy right before you do it. I guarantee you'll feel better. Sacred Snow says, colic and PPD is the mother killer. Thank God my girls didn't have colic because my wife had PPD and I want more kids in the future. Dude, colic is brutal. My wife, when she was a child, she had colic, and effectively her parents, I swear to God, they have like PTSD from it because she just cried for like 2 weeks. She was so upset for whatever reason. But I'll tell you, the way that we had our kids be upset for short durations, but the way that we got around those short durations is, number one, I'll just be real, chest feeding, breastfeeding, whatever you want to call it, breastfeeding over formula. Then you burp them, so you walk around with them holding them and bouncing them gently, and then you also put them on their backs, and then you like move their legs around so they can fart and poop so you can gas them. So feed them, burp them, change them, and then snuggle them. And if you feed them breast milk instead of formula, although if you have to do formula, do what you got to do, right? If you burp them so they're not gassy, so they're not experiencing chest pain and discomfort in their intestines, if you change them so they're dry, and then you snuggle them so they feel comfortable and protected and loved, that's going to solve 80% of your problems, right? Got to live that one and spread it to my friends. Good. His chat is more foregone than he is. True. It's called the demographic transition model. Higher education and standard of living equals less babies. True. Wow, them damn video games. Agreed. Literally, it's easier to smoke pot and play video games than it is to pursue a deep relationship. Gen X, good morning. Good to see you. Jonah Boy says, I'm never donating to the DNC. They'll text me even more than they already do. Yeah, donate to me before you donate to the DNC. But, you know, if you're feeling like it, donate to the DNC. Ahoy, Gen 07. True. Sacred Snow says, F the hospital. They charge us like $50 for a cup of ice. I mean, are you wrong? Casey says, I love you so much for the kid rant. Okay, good. We're a pro-natalist, pro-child chat, okay? That's very good. Very good. Nang Un says, I grew up on cartoons as both parents worked. I guess those programs were just different because I turned out normal. True. Chat. Chesty hates a... Silver says, I like chat better. Chesty hates a pussy. As a former Marine, I have to agree with you. Anyways, continue with the content.
Women having rights. Yeah, but again, they're dropping in Saudi Arabia too. They're dropping in like sub-Saharan Africa, right? They're dropping in places where women's rights are not exactly great. And plus the availability of birth control. It just seems like if people are going to no matter what. And if people have the ability to not have a kid, I think most people are just going to choose that. If you gave birth control, like made it ubiquitous 600 years ago, I bet you there would have been a lot less children. Isn't it better for the climate if there are less people on Earth? Is it really so bad there are 8 billion people on the planet? I wouldn't mind the global population dropping to like 6 billion. Okay, but think long term. The replacement rate isn't, or the birth rate isn't dropping because we're reaching a cap. It's dropping because of other conditions. It's not going to drop to 6 billion, you stupid bitch. It's going to drop to 0. If you have a below replacement rate, birth rate, eventually the population drops to none. It's not tapering down as we approach a cap. It's tapering down, period. It keeps going down. Like that's the implication of the data isn't that we're going to level off at 6 billion humans. It's that the human population just goes down irreparably.
No. Okay, listen, I disagree with Vaush. I agree that this is a logical inference from I need to pay my Adobe. So if I get a payment notification, don't worry about it, okay? But with this, it's incorrect. And this is the same thing. This is like the mistake that Lauren Southern made with like immigration of Muslims into Europe. She just assumed that it's going to go on forever, right? Where that's not the case. And this is actually where I want you guys to be different, okay? So let's say that there's an antenatal core. Let me just draw a rectangle real quick. So let's say that there is the pronatal core and the antenatal core, and I'm saying like CORPS, like a body, okay? So let's say that the antenatal core, which is basically people, who don't want to have children. They're always going to exist, and there's always going to be people who opt out of the population. But let's say the antenatal core has a birth rate of like 0.5, okay? And then let's say that the pronatal core of people has a birth rate of, I think most people have like 2 kids. I'm going to have 3 because I had 3 kids in my family and I thought it was dope. So let's say that the pronatal is 2.5. Let's just say it's like 2.5, okay? So the reason why we're seeing a demographic rate of like 1.33 is because you have, or like 1.66, is because in developed countries, let's say that you're pronatal and you're either going to have 2 kids or you're going to have 3 kids. 2.5 plus 0.5 divide by 2. Sorry, I need to use this because my keyboard isn't working. So that's a demographic replacement rate of 1.5. And we're currently at 1.66. So this is actually, I'm not saying that this is completely sociologically accurate. I'm just saying that this is my theory that I think will bear out over time. What's going to happen is antinatalists are self-selecting and they're going to eliminate themselves from the gene pool. They're going to say, oh, I would rather do this. I would rather, have fun. I would rather go to Europe. I would rather just date into my 50s. I would rather go to movies and, go to Broadway and blah, 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 blah. But what's going to effectively happen with this population demographic is they're going to disappear because they're self-selecting out of the population. But what's going to happen with the pronatal core, which this is literally going to be part of my advocacy, is let's say that everybody who's pronatal has like a 2.5 birth rate, then what's going to happen is demographic replacement is 2.15. So I think what will happen is antinatalists will eliminate themselves from the population. Pronatalists will form a group of pronatal people because they're going to be here and hopefully they're raising their kids to be pronatal as well. And so as a result, we are going to propagate as a genetic lineage, whereas these people are going to effectively self-select out of existence. So that's my theory. I'm not saying it's correct, but I don't think assuming that the human species is going extinct is borne out by logic.
Can we get it below 0? This is not a safe space for antinatalists. I'll have you warned. You've been warned. Don't get banned. People who celebrate the death of the human civilization when they get banned for 30 days from Vaush's chat. No, it's not fair. No, 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 no. Sorry.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah, we need to catch up with Gen X real quick. So hold on 1 second. Let me go full screen and catch up with Gen X. So Gen X is, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're a fan of DGG. You're a fan of Destiny despite his proclivities. Let me scroll up, though. But you did 12 hours of testimony. So Elon will produce more. He'll start mass producing workers through IVF. Yeah, but do we want an entire planet filled with Elons? That would be horrifying. Gen X says, I would be fine with evolution making MAGA means gross and discerning or media literacy better than a third arm to me. Well, right, but Gen X, are you willing to have 2 or 3 kids, or do you have 2 or 3 kids? I think, did you say you had a crazy amount of kids? I forget. There was somebody in chat who was like, I have 7 kids. I think it was one of the Valor people. Gen X says, it was awful. Hundreds of people came and begged and cried, and the committee killed every single bill. Industry won. They can inject carbon beneath houses and schools by eminent domain. Oof. Sorry. I'm sorry. No kids, never ever been pregnant. How old are you, if you don't mind my asking? The people may die, but the idea will live on. Well, I agree with you, JTS. I agree with you that antinatalism is a part of our hedonistic materialist culture that it prioritizes self-actualization. It prioritizes you individually, maximizing your pleasure, maximizing your experiences. Because according to a nihilistic, hedonistic perspective on life, you don't know whether or not there's going to be an afterlife. You don't know whether or not you're going to be reincarnated. You don't know whether or not if this is your sole existence. And so if this is your sole existence and afterlife or death is just mindless oblivion, it's basically like sleep with no dreams. If that's what death is, then effectively, why wouldn't you maximize your pleasurable experiences and minimize your painful experiences while you're here? That's the logic of a nihilist hedonist. And birthing, having children is incredibly painful. It's incredibly logistically complicated. It's incredibly emotionally fraught. So, of course, like having children is like a very high risk, high potential reward strategy, but there's so many risks and there's so much pain and there's so much sacrifice. A lot of people are opting out of the process. Now, what I would argue, though, is that you're missing out on one of the coolest things about being alive, which is effectively cultivating and bringing into the world new life and nurturing it to be successful. That's why I think having kids is so cool. Gen X says that she is 46 and no kids and never been pregnant. Well, Gen X, no offense, I parasocially love you. You're part of the problem. You're part of the antinatalist core. Even if you wanted kids, you're playing into the antinatalist trap. I don't know if you have any health concerns. I'm not trying to be overly rude, but if you didn't want kids and that's the reason why, then yeah. Any thoughts on people having just one? Well, yeah, that's a problem. We can obviously argue that having just one kid is ultimately going to be good for things like carbon consumption. But at the same time, if the demographic replacement rate is 2.15, we're going to have all kinds of economic issues by having an aging population that is larger than the population that works in order to support them. Even if we substantively reduce the population over time, what's going to happen is those older people are going to have access to less and less services because there's going to be less people who are capable of taking care of them. Don't forget JHAP. True. It seems pretty counterintuitive that people that support a welfare state are also antinatalist. Bruh, you're telling me that's going to be one of my points on Friday. I never tried not to have kids, but I was a severe addict most of my adult life, so it's actually good I never had one. If I had my parents, would have taken it from me. Ooh, okay. Well, congratulations on recovery. If you're involved in politics, you're recovered, and you're still advocating for the world to be a better place, then, you know, I'm proud to have you as a chatter. So thank you. I'm too paranoid and nervous. Well, stop. Jesus hates a pussy, okay? John says, I want kids, but I'm ugly as fuck. Listen, brah. We're all ugly as fuck, okay? I gotta, you know, I know I'm a handsome fella in some regards. I'm very tall and, you know, I work out. But the truth is, I think anybody can increase their, I'm going to be sexist, okay? Let me cook. On a scale of 1 to 10, we all have a rating on several factors, okay? We have a rating on our personality. We have a rating on our attractiveness. And we have a rating on our intelligence, okay? So intelligence, 1 to 10, is going to be something that people are going to look for in a partner. I would say on a 1 to 10, I'm not going to lie, I think I'm an 8. I'm pretty smart. I'm retarded. I'm very retarded in a lot of ways. I screw up tons of things in my life and all that kind of stuff. But as far as like intelligence, I'm pretty up there, right? When it comes to looks, I'll say I'm a 7. When it comes to personality, I would say I'm a 3. I'm actually horrible. You know, I talk too much. I'm self-centered. I'm nepotistic. Not nepotistic. I think I'm the main character. I'm not the main character. I know I'm not the main character. My kids are the main characters. But sometimes I act like I'm the main character, right? And so I'm egotistical. I'm selfish. All that kind of crap, right? So, but I think that you can change your evaluations on those 3 things up or down by 2 points. So if you're ugly as hell, let's say you're a 3 out of 10, but you looks max, you work out, you dress nice, all that kind of stuff, I think you can bump yourself up to a 5. And then on a personality level, let's say that you're mean, you're cruel, you're self-interested, you're a piece of shit, all that kind of stuff, you can change all of that. So if you have a bad personality, you can go from like a 3 easily to a 5, and maybe you could go to a 7, especially if you're like funny, charming, charismatic, personable, all that kind of stuff. Those are all things that you can work on. And so what's the other thing? Personality, intelligence. Intelligence is kind of limited, but the truth is, in our economy, intelligence is only worth as much as you can make in money. There are wildly stupid people who are in charge of businesses and they're multimillionaires. So when it comes to money, you need to find a job that you like, that you enjoy, that makes a decent amount of scratch, so you're valuable as a partner in reference to intelligence. I think intelligence is only as important as it correlates with your ability to provide like a material well-being for a partner. And so as a result, John says, I want kids, but I'm ugly as fuck. Listen, dude, you can find a chick who's plus or minus 2 in attractiveness, intelligence, and personality to you. And then, like, let's say you're a 3, you can looks max to a 5, and then you can find a 5 on a 1 to 10. And she might be the most beautiful woman in the world because she's your woman, right? Don't be trying to date Megan Fox. Date a chick that you think is attractive, right? Who's maybe she's not the hottest chick in the world, but she has redeeming qualities that make her attractive to you. Go for that. And if she has a killer personality, she wants the same things that you want. She's interested in some of the nerd hobbies that you have. She's intelligent and funny and all that kind of stuff. Then you need to go for that, right? You need to find your conventionally ugly wife who's beautiful. That's what you need to do. So don't worry about being ugly. We're all ugly. And some of the prettiest people in the world have dog shit personalities and they're stupid as hell. So don't let ugliness stand in the way. Casey, I clicked on that before I read it. Casey, you lunatic. That was crazy pants. That was a crazy thing to say. My logic has always been that we would just go back to where we were before we were born after we die, so effectively oblivion. I don't remember much before I was born. I'm not a nihilist, though. I suspect that's true. There's weird evidence of afterlife stuff that I've seen. I've talked to somebody who allegedly died and experienced an afterlife, and they had the surgery scars to show that they were like severely injured, potentially killed. And actually, I'll tell you a story real quick. I know we need to get to the content. I want to be respectful of Sean Kaplan, so we will work through the antinatalist content, but I think, or the natalist content, but I do think this is interesting enough to talk about. I met a guy in college. I forget his name. I think it was like Brandon or something. And we were just talking about like life, death, philosophy, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, dude, I died. And I was like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, I had a friend. They were going like 120 miles an hour. We were in the country. We were in the sticks. And we effectively lost control. We spun out sideways, hit a tree at like 100 miles an hour, and I broke my neck. And so what happened was the EMTs got on scene. I felt like I was dying, and I died. And the last thing that I did was I handed the EMT a pack of cigarettes and said, I wanted you to have this, or I want you to have this. And that was just like in a moment of like disoriented, slipping into oblivion, you know, whatever. And so what he said is that he did die. He was gone for like 10 minutes or so. And he went to a place where he was still conscious of himself. He was still Brandon or whatever, but he was effectively in like a giant warm, what felt like a warm bath of like pure love. And he just kind of floated there. And he wasn't a believer. He didn't believe in Jesus. He didn't necessarily like have like an explicit belief in God. He wasn't particularly religious. He wasn't a good person, but he wasn't a terrible person either. And then what happened was they, you know, his heart stopped. They fixed his neck. They fixed his like nervous system where they like repositioned his neck so that it would function. And then boom, he slipped back into reality. And he basically said that coming back into reality was so painful that he didn't want to do it. He did not want to be alive. He wanted to stay in the warm bath with all of the universe and the universe's love and timelessness and all that kind of stuff. And so while that's anecdotal, it's 100% anecdotal. If you want to say that that's just his brain coping with being dead, if you just want to say that's like a chemical process that, you know, the body does in order to calm down while it's passing from existence, that's totally possible. I agree with you that that's totally possible. And eventually, even though he experienced that timeless, self-aware, warm bath and love, that he might have eventually slipped into unconscious oblivion. I agree with you that that's possible, but I would not be surprised if the concept of heaven came from near-death experiences like that. And also, if he's telling the truth, that's possible for everyone, basically. Even Hitler might get a warm bath as he's dying. Do you think we're lost the biological imperative to have kids, a life dangerous in the early days, have kids to survive through them? I'm probably misunderstanding this. No, I think you're right. I think we've lost the biological imperative. So I think you're right. I talk to people all the time and they're like, it's not necessary. Other people are having kids. And I'm like, oh, you're not following basic human instinct. Good for you. You're literally ignoring the thing that makes you human, you dummy. Conservative liberalism says I'm ugly as sin, but confidence and humor can go a long way. Take care of yourself and pull your own weight in the world. Keep your feet on solid ground. Yeah, I don't like to do purely bootstrap behavior. Obviously, if you're ugly, I'm not going to tell you that you're not ugly. But just because you're ugly doesn't mean you can't be funny, smart, charismatic, kind, intelligent. Being ugly is only a part of the picture, right? My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Whoa, what? Casey said something vulgar where I'm just going to repeat it in a kinder way. He's saying when you are engaging in a physical relationship with a partner, regardless of whether or not you're heterosexual or homosexual, if you want to continue that relationship, it is better to physically give than it is to receive. That's the polite way that Casey just said that. Okay. He said something vulgar, but I'll say it kindly. Don't kill yourselves to see if it's a real pit. Yep. Nope. Ride it out. Bud123 says, I'm ugly, I'm proud, I'm ugly, and I'm proud. Oh, yeah. Casey says, guy got yeeted back to the immeasurable pain of the mortal plane. True. Connor will tell you to your straight if your faces melt. Yep, I'll tell you the truth. Don't worry about being ugly, though. We're all ugly in some ways. Not following our instincts is exactly what makes us human. No, wrong. You're a biological being. You're a hairless ape. You need to simultaneously temper your instincts, but you also need to listen to them as well. Your instincts were given to you by God and nature. Ignoring your instincts is not a W. What about people who assert that they do not have that desire at all? I think there's something biochemically wrong with them. I think asexual people, the way that depression can be a response to your life, but it also can be a biochemical issue in your brain where your brain creates too much of one hormone. I think that asexuality can also be a physiological or hormonal issue that negates your sex drive. And I think that there's probably something biochemically wrong with you that you could probably fix with drugs or therapy. Conservative liberalism said, I had a similar warmth, love feeling in what felt like a deep sleep paralysis, but wasn't. I just held still as a glowing orb in my bedroom doorway that I knew to be my dad coming home to visit me. Nice. Harmonic Fox says that I agree with, you should be willing to be a giver. However, I don't think having children is the only reason for our existence. It's not. It's not. And while I'm wildly pro-natalist, we're effectively doing our own pro-natalist segment. I'm sorry, Sean Kaplan. I promise we'll get into the content. But I feel like this is important stuff to talk about. I agree with you. And there are people who cannot have children. I don't think that their existence is meaningless. I think people who cannot or choose not to have children still need to look outside themselves for purpose. Your purpose should still not be raw pleasure and minimization of pain. Your purpose can be some pleasure, some minimization of pain, but it also should be about what you can do for society, what you can do for your community, what you can do for your family, what you can do for your friends. You still have to look for purpose outside of yourself, because the truth is that purpose is a individual self-actualization as a purpose is a very limited goal that you can fulfill or you can fall apart on at any given moment due to health issues, due to psychological issues. So yourself is not a reason enough in order to continue existence. I think the drop in birth rate is highly correlated with women's lib and them entering the workforce. Western society has very little time for family and children, even in good European societies. I agree, but how do you get women back out of the workplace if they like the workplace, right? It's a balance. Conservative liberalism says no idea what afterlife is like, considering time is such a weird construct, a merchant property, the expansion of time and space, right? But it's kind of hard to believe things are as simple as we think. Agreed. I don't believe Shakespearean Sonnet 130, it's about being in love with an unattractive woman. Pachydermis Absurdus with the fire chat. Shakespeare Sonnet 130. I'll remind me later. We need to do the content. I need to be respectful of Sean. I'm abusing his patience. Let me stop abusing Sean.
I feel like anti-natalism.
We don't have to do this whole thing if he starts looping, so we'll just do like 10 minutes. I feel like we did our own pro-natalism segment. Vaush just inspired us. So let's see if he gets into anything else that's interesting.
Some is a very reactionary tendency. I agree. It's like a subset of misanthropy, and misanthropy is like stupid edgelord bullshit that I don't respect. You should really just add NL's I can't emote. No getting around the act.
It's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, your DSCC chair, and I need your help immediately.
Sorry.
Accusations, huh? What would be a reasonable solution now? I don't know. Have all the birthing being done by like a birth mothers, like as a job. You try to reach some kind of quota for different districts, or I don't.
He's shit posting. He doesn't believe in having birthing mothers.
I don't know, mandates or something. I don't know. It seems like all the answers are pretty scary, but maybe it could be like a tour of service kind of thing, right? Like if nobody wants to have or raise kids on their own, it's like, well, rather than serving in the military for 4 years, you actually get like bread, which a lot of you would volunteer for without pay, to be fair. So
Yo, he came up with an idea that I actually don't totally hate. If you look at men, right? Oftentimes men's contribution to society is obviously working, being productive, and all that kind of stuff, and it's also serving in the military. And serving in the military is not necessarily an economically productive behavior. We protect the global economy, so the global economy functions. Then we tax the global economy and the domestic economy in order to pay for the military. So as a result, the military is actually not a how do I phrase this? It's not necessarily like a profitable economic machine, right? It protects profit, but it itself is not profitable. So maybe that's the way that we need to look at having children, is effectively having 2 children, 3 children, whatever. It's like a tour of duty in the military, where if you have 2 or 3 kids, then you effectively have like scaling benefits that help you take care of those kids and give them a good life. I'm literally I know that makes me a commie or whatever, but yeah. Send Patty said it. I served 5 years in the breeding guard. Exactly. Harmonic says, I agree. We should contribute when it says go forth and prosper, etc. Yahweh is really trying to say to create something and spread goodness in the world. Exactly. Sapient with the donation. Thank you kindly, sir. 200 DKK. I don't think that women should leave the workforce, but we definitely have to do something to make family a more central part of society again. Women have a great point when they talk about unpaid labor. I agree. I'm gonna mull on this. I'm gonna think on this about what I think appropriate benefits would be for having kids as a public service. So we'll see. That's where the super citizens are born. Indeed. All right, continue.
So I don't want to hear any complaining. You know, the breeding camps was a Nazi thing, right? Can you not be dumb, please? When the pro-natalist camp talks about raising birth rates, they are talking about white people. They want a white ethnostate to raise white birth rates. I'm just talking about the general trend of birth rates declining. I don't give a shit if we're black, brown, white. And I don't think there should be like coercion.
Agreed, Stinky. Agreed.
To it either. I think that for a lot of people who are born with a womb, if you were like you'll get like a really cushy job basically, and for 2 years you literally just have to like sit around and eat enough food to sustain yourself and the fetus. This is literally no different than what the Trump regime is proposing with their medals from other shit. I mean, it is different in a variety of ways, like the fact that I'm not talking about conforming to the typical parental structure, but rather doing it as a kind of civic service, which really cuts away, like it's pretty anti-fascist, because fascists protect the family unit as a like micro chauvinist emblem of state power, and I'm talking more about it being like a civil service thing. But you know, I mean, whatever, go off, king or queen or whatever. I don't care about pronouns basically, because I'm woker than you. I don't know. I don't think having children should be a civic service. Okay. That's fine. So if the birth rates are falling and nobody's having kids and the population's decreasing and it just keeps going down and keeps going down, what would you do? What would you suggest to fix that? It'll stabilize, genius. You have literally no reason to believe that. The birth rate is falling even in Iceland, a country with like 5 people. There's no evidence to suggest that the birth rate will stabilize. Like for some reason humans will just be like, yeah, I want to have kids now because the country they live in has 40% fewer people. There's no evidence of that. Parental leave, tax credit, free healthcare and childcare. What else can you do? They have that in a bunch of European countries. Birth rates plummeted. Make it easier to raise kids. Okay, sure. But like wealthy people are also having fewer kids. So it doesn't seem like it's a wealth thing or a time thing, or like countries where people get lots of state offered provisions, you know, lots and lots and lots of stuff from the government to have kids, still not really moving the needle that much. Then what is it? I don't know. Nobody knows. It really does seem like people would just rather play dang video games. Like the evolutionary incentive to having children is that it feels good when you, right? But now that we can without having kids is a choice, and it's a choice a lot of people are not making. In Poland, you literally get paid monthly for each child you're raising at the moment, and it's not helping. Yeah, the antinatalists are still rearing up. Don't make your misanthropy my problem, mother. The people are still doing it. There are still people in chat being like, here's my novel solution to the birth rate collapse. We let the only sentient species in the universe that we've seen black holes, we've measured the speed of light, we've produced art and culture, the likes of which might be unrivaled in all the cosmos. Let's let it die out because we don't want to talk about like the basic logistics demographic question.
Yo, so listen, trying to get back into content and commentary instead of just talking about like life and kids and family and stuff. Okay, in reference to this is what's so funny about the far left. Okay, is that effectively a bunch of them are misanthropic. I'm gonna say it. Dysgenic, antisocial nerds. No offense to any present company. I parasocially love you, and you have a 3,000 IQ just for being in this chat. And so, as a result of that, when you're saying you need to have kids, they like rebel. They're like, no, I need to smoke pot and play video games and be in a Discord all day, and I need to not get a job that makes me inconvenienced at all, and I need to just do things that make me happy because I don't care whether or not the species propagates. And it's like, bruh, like, no, that's not good enough. Okay, you weren't put on this planet to play Zelda and smoke pot. Okay, thousands of animals and thousands of acres of land will not be harvested in order to support you playing video games, specifically Nintendo, and then hanging out in a Discord all day. This is not why civilization was created. Okay, you need to find your adventure, find your purpose, pursue your adventure, pursue your purpose, and you need to share your adventure and share your purpose with other people. That's why you were put on this planet, not just to play video games and, seek self-pleasure, right? Pleasure seek. Grassroots Touch a Month for $20 says, $20, Vaush is shockingly based throughout this. And Connor, fix your back end so I can give you memberships without hearing my gaping maw. Okay. All right. I appreciate you, Grassroots. I'll fix the back end. I will be traveling tomorrow for Tim Pool, and I will be, I'll have the weekend to work on back end stuff. So Silver is saying that he's not being based. So tell us how he's not being based. Wow, what do you have against Nintendo? Ooh, John, now you're going to feel even more personally attacked. What do I have against it? Okay. So what I have against Nintendo is that Xbox, the flagship game is, what is it? It's Halo, right? So it's a semi-mature teenager science fiction violent video game, right? PlayStation has a bunch of games, but it has a mix of mature games and weird games and all that kind of stuff. Nintendo seems to specifically be broadly immature Japanese games and pornographic degeneracy. Okay. The reason why I'm saying that is because, like, on Nintendo, isn't it majority like JRPGs? Isn't it majority like Mario and associated products like that? Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and do this so I can back up my point and just instead of talking out of my ass. But it's not designed for shooters or more mature games. It's designed for kids games, basically. So Nintendo video games. There's no degeneracy. What are you talking about? Let's take a look. And don't tell me there's no degeneracy, Cameron Mosley. As a matter of fact, I'm going to prove you wrong in just a second. So there might be a limited amount of degeneracy on Nintendo. Nintendo most popular video games. Let's do most popular video games. Nintendo most popular video games. This is going to feel like a very personal attack to some of you. So Samus, Hot Chicken Power Armor. That's cool. That's relatively more mature. Zelda, no offense, the boy is confused with a girl half the time. Mario, which is a kid's game. And we're going to argue about whether or not there's degeneracy. All of these are Mario characters and Zelda characters. In Captain Falcon, in Samus. There's no violence here. Like all the violence is like cute. It's cutesy violence. And then I did remember that there were some fighting games on Nintendo, but it also looks like they're incredibly old and not very popular. Ocarina of Time, Super Mario, Breath of the Wild, Wii Sports, Donkey Kong, Pokemon Red, Tetris, and Super Mario Kart are the most influential Nintendo games. Okay, so I'm going to take a risk. Okay, I'm going to take a risk. What I'm saying is that Nintendo socially stunts you by constantly having childish themes and childish characters. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to Google Zelda art, and then I'm going to turn safe search off. Where's the tools settings more? And I can almost hear chat probably screaming no, don't turn safe search off. So maybe I won't turn safe search off, but the truth is that if I turn off safe search, half of this is going to be hentai pornography. Okay, because the childish people who have not grown up because they've been playing childish video games for 30 or 40 years, they are sexually stunted. And so they must sexualize all of their childish stuff. And so as a result, they take things that are wholesome, that are not pornographic, and they make them pornographic. Same thing with Bowsette. No, it's not half. It's 20%. Bowsette. Right? Don't tell me that this comes from a place of sexual maturity. Okay? This character can only come from sexual stunting. Okay? This can only come from a absolute refusal to touch grass. So that's not Nintendo's fault. I think it's Nintendo's fault. The reason why it's Nintendo's fault is because everyone whose primary platform is Nintendo is in some way socially stunted. Sorry, what's that? Okay. I got the text. I need to read it, though. Okay. All right. Then, anyways, that'll always happen with gaming. Yes, but here's the thing. So I know I'm pissing off all the Nintendo bros, okay? But what I would argue is that when you have normalized violence and sexuality on other platforms like PC, Xbox, all that kind of stuff, what happens is you have like a more mature perspective on violence and sex because they actually create content that is designed towards teenagers and adults. Whereas I feel like with Nintendo, specifically people who only play Nintendo, who only like Nintendo, is that there's like an infantilization where they don't want to grow up. It's Peter Pan syndrome. They don't want to deal with all the violence. They don't want to deal with all the sex. And so as a result, they socially stunt. But then sex is such a powerful force that it turns all the childish video games into gross, lewd, degenerate pornography. You don't have to like it, but that's my theory. I'm currently buying 30 Nintendo Switches because Connor bullied my favorite corporation. Listen, I knew that was going to go up like a lead balloon, okay? I knew that there was going to be people who hated it. We lost a few people on that one. What if you're a woman and you just like cute baby aesthetics because you like cute babies? Hey, that's good. That's fine. I'll forgive that. We actually lost people. People were like, Connor, I hate this take. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, exactly. John's like, unsubscribe, fuck you. All right. I'm done bullying the Nintendo people. I'm done bullying the Nintendo people. I promise. You didn't like that. I get it. We'll move on. Listen, I lost chat. I lost 10% of my chat because I started bullying Nintendo. I'm sorry for thinking that's so funny, but I do think it's mad funny that we were like, I'm just gonna be real. So we were in the middle 40s, and then I started bullying Nintendo, and then we lost like 5 to 10 people because I was bullying Nintendo. Oscar is like, still here, but fuck you. That's fine. That's fair. We'll move on. I'm sorry for laughing. Sorry for picking on Nintendo. I'm sorry for accusing you guys of sexual degeneracy. My apologies. Okay. My apologies. You guys are big boys and big girls. Okay. Anyways, we got to move on. Sacred Snow says Fire Emblem is pretty base, but it's going to be the Nintendo treatment in newer games. Okay. All right. Enough about Nintendo. All right, let's go.
You're not welcome here. Yeah, like if you hate yourself and you want to die, don't make that my problem. Okay, I've got an actual solution, okay? Genetic engineering. And we make babies less stupid and annoying. Like, what if the first like 3 to 4 years of a baby's life were sped up, basically? So you didn't have that awful like parenthood is never sleeping and wiping their butts 24/7 period, you know?
Mm.
Like what if they were like pogged up to the gills a little bit when they came out, you know what I mean? Like you have a kid and it's like, oh, don't worry, in 6 weeks they'll be making their own meals. Bam. Pretty good, right? That's why babies should be raised by the state instead. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with the idea of like community child rearing. Raised by the state kind of implies like a doctrinal approach towards that I disagree with, you know? But if you mean like public school from day one or something, or like they're taken care of in nurseries or whatever, like we've done that for all of human history. Yeah. Like kids' parents die, they're in an orphanage, they're in a nunnery, they're in a nursery, you know, they get raised by the school. Like, yeah, if you could really like beef that up, right, and make it like, oh wow, you know, you're like a little kid, look at all this wonderful shit you get to enjoy and explore, because a huge portion of society and the wealth of society is directed towards making, you know, this a good experience for you. That could be workable, you know. Yeah, no, that quality of life for the kid to be hellish, though. I don't think that's necessarily innately true. I don't think that's innately true. I don't think there's anything special about the nuclear family that like magically makes that a better child rearing environment than like being raised by the village or whatever, the way we did for you know, a long time. But obviously it'd have to be done well. But it's the same with nuclear families. Like what happens if you're a kid and you're born to shitty parents? That happens literally all the time to like.
So honestly, we might move on because I want to be respectful of Sean Kaplan, and I bullied the Nintendo people super hard. My apologies. And then what I wanted to say though is that somebody asked, Mr. Bombastic, they say, are there any historical examples of communal children? Seems interesting. So with the communal child rearing, there's the kibbutzim in Israel, where effectively what's going on is they had like a socialized tribal communal setting where they lived in a compound with multiple families. And what would happen is that there would be family members of this extended family group and multi-family group, and they would watch the kids while the rest of the adults worked. And so they took turns either watching the kids, taking care of the kids, working the fields, all that kind of stuff, which I think could be cool, relatively speaking, to have like a close-knit community. That's totally fine. Now, the problem with that is that it can go too far. I Googled it real quick. I couldn't find the example, but I think that there's a Soviet country that effectively said that all children should be raised by the state. And they took babies and they put them all in like a communal setting. But the problem was that the infants weren't getting contact. They weren't even being touched by the nursing staff. They weren't being like raised and coddled by the nursing staff. And I hate to say it, but some of those children passed. They died because a child doesn't just need food, water, shelter. A child needs contact, love, and attention. And so that's where, if it's kind of like the communal model where we all work together in order to take care of children, I'm for that. I'm for extended family groups working together in order to raise children. But if it comes down to the state intentionally raising kids, pass. That's way too commie for me. I'll tell you that. Casey says Vaush's autism will never not entertain me. I gave him up years ago. I used to be in VGG chats, and my comments showed up in his videos till 2023. Well, Vaush can be charismatic as entertaining. I just think he has bad takes a healthy chunk of the time. So, okay, boomer. Weak bullying, weak argument. It's okay. I deserve it. I deserve the hatred that my chat gave to me, okay? Cameron says, Connor, I disagree with your Nintendo take because many video games try to be so adult and serious that they forget to have fun. That is a stronger counter argument. You just can't raise kids like fish. Yeah, exactly. Extended family is probably the most important, so everyone has a genetic stake. True. Connor, remember, we are 1 week of MAGA TikTokers talking about how salmonella isn't bad for you. Yeah, dude. Yeah. All right. Anyways, so the point is, let's put a bow on this because I'll still turn this into a segment, okay? Because we went a little wild with it. We went a little crazy. Vaush inspired a very interesting conversation, and then I took it way too far and started bullying my own chat about Nintendo, which I apologize for, okay? There are some people who very much took it in the spirit with which it was meant, which was to be a joke. Some people took it incredibly personally. So it is what it is. But what I would say in summary is that this whole alternative media scene is not necessarily good for you. You can spend hours, days, weeks focusing on inane drama or politics that you can't control. The whole point is to ultimately be pro-social and pro-natal. I applaud Vaush for trying to engender pro-natal ideas into a community that has lots of anti-natalists. And I would say that it is a real problem. I think we were talking to Sen Patty earlier. I think we were talking to some other folks earlier about life, death, kids, purpose, all that kind of stuff. And the main thing that you should take away from this segment is Jesus hates a pussy. And having kids is cool. Having kids is difficult. We need to make it easier. But realistically, the pro-natal core, the people who love kids, want to take care of kids, want to have kids, want to raise kids, we ultimately need to make it attractive and easy for people to have families. End of rant. All right. Anyways, parasocial, love you guys. Hope you have a great day.